friends, welcome to Plants and Prosecco. I thought I would take you out here into the vegetable garden today and we would prune some tomatoes and we would talk about, the ways that you do that, at least down here. I know there are lots of people that don't ever prune their tomatoes and they usually live in places that aren't super humid. If you live someplace that's dry or that's really hot, you might not want to do that because you might want your fruit to have the protection, or you might not have the issues with blight that we have. But if you live in a place that is super humid and hot, you tend to struggle with disease and fungus and that kind of thing. So we keep our tomatoes pretty pruned down here. So I just wanted to show you kind of how I do that and how I keep them all kind of cleaned up. I have not been good at doing it this year, and with all the rain we've had, the growth has definitely exploded, so they really need it. So let me walk you down here, and I've got 3 plants in these boxes back here, and I'll show you. One's already been pruned, and then I've got to prune the other 2, so I'll walk you through how I do that. Okay, so this right here is my Cherokee Purple. That is my absolute favorite tomato, and this is one that I already pruned. So you can tell it's got good airflow. I've also taken off, you can see down here, I've taken everything up to the stem, probably about a foot or so, maybe a little less than a foot. I've taken all of that off. That way none of the foliage hits the ground. That's a really important thing because a lot of times fungal infections start in the soil. So if you are watering your plants and the water splashing on the leaves, that can cause disease. Because I let these overgrow, you can see normally I trim these back to a single liter. So tomatoes do this thing, and I can show you because there's probably tomatoes do this thing where they get suckers. It's called a sucker that grows. Let me see if I can find one. I did prune this one, so I might have to show you one I haven't pruned. Actually, no, there's a sucker here I missed. So this is actually a sucker that we missed. So they start out as these little bitty, there's one starting here, that little bitty leafy growth right there that you can kind of see my finger touching. They start off like that, and then they turn into another whole stem. So generally with tomatoes, so that you don't end up with lots of little fruit, you end up with some bigger fruit. This is all indeterminate tomatoes. Generally determinate tomatoes you don't want to prune because you're going to get a set amount of fruit off of that. So I just take my snips when they get this big and clip that off. And if you wanted to, you could actually stick this in some water and root it and plant it somewhere else, because this is literally a whole nother tomato plant. So let me take you over here. But what I was saying about the single liter, so normally I prune all my tomato plants to a single liter and I let them branch this way. This one I missed this sucker down here and it turned into this great big huge branch. And at this point I don't want to shock the plant. I actually cut, it had 3 liters and I cut one out. So this one's big enough and it's put enough energy into it, I'm just going to leave it. But this guy over here, you can see looks very different. This is some kind of Roma. Can't remember if it's a Supremo or San Marzano, but this is a Roma. So you can see this guy's got good airflow, pruned up. I can see all the sides of the plant. This not so much. And this one actually I noticed has fruit on it already. So let me get you in here and I will walk you through how we're going to prune this. So the first thing I do, generally because it's easier, is I go down to the bottom of the plant down here and I see how many things I have coming out toward the bottom. So let's see if we can get in here. So this right here is one I'm going to take off. It looks like there are, so here's this one right here is the single liter, right next to the stake, and then this is another liter, this is another liter, and this is another liter. So I'm going to start with this smaller one right here. And then I'm going to look at these and see, because I see fruit and I don't want to damage this too much. So let me take this one next. So as you can see, this is a big part of this plant. This is almost an entirely another tomato. So that already looks better, much cleaner. And then this is another liter right here. But that is actually coming off the main stem. So now that I can kind of see the main stem, I can clean this up. So I'm just gonna come down here and just clean up. That does not want to come off. Okay. This is totally my fault because I let these get so overgrown. All right, so I am gonna cut this guy off. It doesn't have any fruit on it, and it's gonna open the middle of this plant up. Okay. So now this right here, I just need to stake up. So this, if this were staked, is this whole plant. So let me go and get some ties and stake this up, and that will be helpful too. Okay, so I just went and grabbed some twist ties. We actually saved these in our kitchen. But I will link to you my favorite. I actually think I have one in here. So my favorite ties are these. They're like soft, and you can see they're kind of green. I'll link those down below. I really like them. You cut them to the size you need, and you get like 33 feet of those. So these I actually think are my favorite. But any twist tie you can come across will be useful. So this is going to help us. So this right here is a sucker, and when they're this small, you can just plop that right out like that. And that's the ideal thing, is to get them out. But when they get this big, sometimes, oh, this one might let me. Sometimes they'll let you, like that one let me. Sometimes you can get them out, and that's going to be a lot happier because this plant's going to be able to grow up. Tomatoes are actually really cool plants because in nature, if you get them where they're native, and I noticed down here, because this has kind of been, it's been really wet and it's been touching. Let me see if I can get you down here close enough to see. So anywhere a tomato touches, yeah, see those little white nodes right there? Those are actually roots. So tomatoes are really cool in that anywhere they touch the soil, they'll try to root in. So in nature, they're a vine. So they'll actually just lay on the soil and root in like all along the trunk like this. So you could actually create roots out of any part of your tomato. So they're really tough plants and pretty easy to grow if they're not covered in blight, which is what we're trying to prevent today. So I'm gonna start, I think, at the top because this plant is so overgrown, and it'll help me kind of clean it out. So here's a sucker right here, and I'm just gonna take out with my fingers. This is the top of the plant where it's gonna keep going, and that's fine. And Romas, you'll notice, also have really long branches with really long leaves. When you look at a tomato, like this is a Cherokee Purple, which is more of a slicer, these are probably half the length. So sometimes Romas you end up having to prune a little heavier because they're or a little higher, I should say, because their leaves like this, even though this is pretty high up the plant, it touches the ground, and you just don't want that. That is actually a secondary leader though, this right here, and it doesn't have any fruit on it. So I'm gonna prune it off. Just like that. Right here, we're taking, that's our whole pile of stuff we've taken out of this plant. I know it hurts too, and you feel like you're hurting the plant. You're really not. You're actually helping it because this is gonna create so much airflow in here. So I could actually take all of these off, and I think I will, because these, like this is gonna go over the plant, and I want to protect, like it's already got some fruit coming off the main stalk right here, you can see, and I'd rather it do that. And it'll get tall, and a lot of times what we'll do is we'll just drape them over the side of the fence, but that gets harder and it starts impeding on other plants. Like I've got peppers over here, so we really want it to be tall and vine over the fence. So you just kind of want to keep in mind too how much space you have to let your tomatoes grow, because the more you prune them, actually the closer you can plant them together. So, you know, you can really have like a single leader that goes straight up, and that's when you can do the like the long and lean version where you put a string, and as it gets longer you hold it up and up and up and it just climbs a string. You can do that too. You just kind of have to figure out what your space looks like. So this one back here is the other one I'm going to take out, and that gets it down to one single leader. So this one I did train all the way down to one single leader. So you can see now we can see all the leaves toward the bottom better. So that one right here, this right here, this leaf is touching the ground, and I don't want that. So I'm gonna come in here with my snips and cut that off. It looks like there's also this one right here on the back, and I don't want that either. So that basically gets everything. Let's see, maybe everything. That one could come off too. You don't want to cut them too sparse because they need the leaves to recharge, but you also want them to be healthy. So I know it feels like I took a lot out of this plant, but it's actually going to be better off because now there's good airflow. Nothing is touching the ground. This is a bunch of detritus we can clean up here. Oh no, I lost a little fruit guy. That's okay. So that's everything we took out of this, and we got it down to here, but it's going to keep growing, especially with all the rain we've had. And then I'm just going to stay on top of taking all the little suckers out because the plant will be much better off. I'm actually going to put one more tie right here, I think, when I come back through. But so you can see how much healthier and how much better the airflow is around here. So there's no blight on any of these leaves yet. I see no like little brown curly edges or dots on the leaves. I don't really struggle with blight here at the house. I have it down at my community garden plot a lot, but it's still good to give your tomatoes room to breathe. Okay, so this is the Roma. I have one more. I have a Brad's Atomic I'm going to show you guys that needs to be pruned as well. All right, friends. So this, you can see this mess right here is very much in need of some pruning as well. So I'm gonna tackle this guy, and we'll see how much we can get this cleaned up. So if you go down in here, I'm gonna kind of do the same thing. I'm probably gonna have to put some ties up here once I figure out where the main leader is. So if we look down in here, you can see it's a hot mess. So let me just start cleaning up. All right, I think I'm gonna put you guys down and I'll just clean this one up, and then we will walk through it when we're done. All right, friends, so I got that all taken care of. You can see how much better it looks. I remembered there's Malabar spinach planted back here. The beans can breathe a little bit more. I have cabbage back here that's been totally shrouded over, and the bees are loving this wild arugula right now. It's just been covered. You can kind of see this little guy right here. Let me see if I can get closer. Yeah, you see that little friend right there? Yeah, they're just loving this wild arugula right now. So I'm just letting it go to flower. It's a perennial type of arugula anyway, so if the pollinators love it, it's bringing them happiness, which brings me happiness. But yeah, so this right here, I've got it down to a single leader, and it's actually already getting quite tall. I'm gonna grab another, it needs another tie in the middle just to help it. And then this is gonna keep growing, and I'm gonna train it. We're gonna just kind of drape it over the fence and let it crawl the backside. And it's got fruit on it already coming in. This is a Brad's Atomic grape. So these are actually already starting to color up, which is kind of cool. And I got all the leaves I could up and not touching the ground. So everything should be much better now. So hopefully all of these tomatoes will be happier being pruned up. This one also, I think, because we've had so much water and it's been touching its own foliage. It's got all those little, let me see if I can get you in nice and close. Yeah, you see all those? Those are all nodes where it's trying to develop roots. So that's also why you bury tomatoes. When you plant tomatoes and you have plant starts, you also bury a third of the plant. And that's because it will root from the stem and you'll have a much healthier plant. So this over here is all the detritus from the Brad's Atomic grape. And then up here, we have all the detritus from the Roma. So Roma, Cherokee Purple. I know it seems very severe, but I promise you when we do garden walkthroughs and I show you how healthy these plants are, they're gonna be over the back of the fence. We're gonna have to get the ladder to get all the tomatoes off. They'll be super, super healthy. And everything else that's in here, you can grow a lot more food when you keep your tomatoes pruned, because if you let them, they will just take over and crowd everything out. So you're still gonna get a great yield. Your tomato plants will be healthier, and it's gonna make it much, much easier for you to manage your garden. For reference here, I thought I would show you, so these are Patio Sunshine in these two containers, and that is actually a determinate tomato. So I thought I would show you kind of the difference. So these you can prune. Oh, we've had so much water. Look at all the roots coming off of the trunk there. And this one actually looks like it's got a little bit of, maybe a little bit of blight happening, but not bad. I'll come in and prune. So basically, if you ever see these little spots, anything like this, whether it's blight or not, you just want to take the affected leaves off. So usually I just prune out that whole stalk before, so that way if it's infected, it's not hurting the rest of the plant. So like this one too, because I'm not sure what's going on there. I'll just come in and take, so I'm gonna follow this one back. Basically for determinate tomatoes, you just want to make sure they can breathe. So you're not going to come in and take all the suckers off, because if you take all the suckers off, you're sacrificing your yield, because these only set a determined amount of fruit. They grow to a determined size, and then that's the fruit you're going to get. So you don't want to prune these too severely. But what I would do, and these probably needed a little bit, is do kind of the same thing where you come in and just make sure none of the leaves are touching the ground, so you can actually prune those off the stems. Like this is a whole stem right here, and you can just prune it off. This one never grew with a leader, so it was really hard to stake. So even though these are the same kind, you can see they have two different growth habits right now. So you just kind of, for determinate tomatoes, you don't want to prune them as severely. But you do want them to have a little bit more airflow, especially if you deal with blight, because they're still going to suffer from the same diseases. So I'm not going to come in and prune off. Like you can tell, this one all the suckers are there, and all the suckers have fruit because they set most of their fruit at the same time. But I will come in here and just pop off anything that looks diseased or dead, just to keep the plant healthy. And I'm gonna let this one kind of grow just to see what it does. It's like growing more in a natural kind of way, like tomatoes normally do. But yeah, so you just kind of want to make sure you get them up off the ground if you can, normally, and then that they have a little bit of airflow. So these should be fine. I may move them apart just so they have airflow around the plant, because this is a little too close to all of my herbs and stuff. But they look really healthy, and they're setting a lot of fruit, and so I'm just going to leave them kind of as is. But yeah, you just want to make sure good airflow. You take anything that has kind of diseased looking or damaged or dying foliage off, just in case it's a disease. But other than that, you're really just going to let these grow the way they want to grow. So you can get all the fruit off of them that they are wanting to set. All right, friends, that's all I've got for you today. Let me know if you have any tips or tricks about how you prune your tomatoes or tomato care. I'll probably do another video about actual tomato maintenance. But just thought I'd hop in and give you guys a quick tutorial on how to prune tomatoes, or how I prune my tomatoes. Everybody has a different situation. Everybody's environment is different, hot, cold, wet, dry. So it's a little different for everybody, but I'd love for you to hop into the comments and let me know what works for you. We'll see you next time. Bye.